And yeah, thank you. And we want to do that through whole human pedagogy, so the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual elements. So we've had the good fortune of having worked with a number of illustrious institutions, both in the US, Canada, as well as in Australia. And over the last 12 years, we've delivered about 200 plus programs for 5,500 students with very high quality and student ratings as well as institution ratings, which makes us really kind of proud and puts us in a really good position to do what we're doing now. So, from a footprint perspective, we have primary focus on Central and Western Europe as well as Asia. We have a small dot down there in South Africa just because we have wonderful partners. And in terms of program models, we've largely been a faculty-led program shop. So we've delivered most of the 200 programs have been faculty-led programs as well as internships. All of them focused on advancing UN Sustainable Development Goals. Most recently, we've launched standard programs in Barcelona and Florence. And you may be wondering, of all the places that we could be starting a program, why standard program in Florence and Barcelona? And that's precisely the topic today, which is, as Mediterranean cities have been fascinating, have been actually around for a very long time, dating back to centuries, right? So, but today, if you look at Florence and Barcelona, is especially in the city center, there's hardly any space to move around with people taking selfies and stuff. So over tourism, climate challenge, sustainable transportation, all of these are challenges these really ancient cities are facing while still maintaining their UNESCO heritage status and cultural authenticity. So the question becomes, how do we create sustainable solutions when you cannot tear down and rebuild these centuries old cities? So we have lots of constraints, cannot tear down and rebuild, we can't ignore cultural heritage, uh, we cannot compromise heritage status. At the same time, we need to retrofit these buildings to to sustain modern life, manage transportation. Especially if you've been to Florence, you'll see how much of a challenge that is in the medieval streets, and balance preservation with progress. Right. So that's really kind of what we want to talk about today, which is how do you sort of use these historic cities as living laboratories, and how do you kind of engage students with local communities, and what are some strategies that we can implement as part of this, so that we become part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. Now, before I introduce the speakers, I want to kind of launch a quick poll to understand your institutional priorities. You will actually see a poll popping up.
What is your institution primary motivation for?
Yeah, it would be great if you can take a minute to answer this poll. Effectively, we are asking, what's your institution's primary motivation for considering sustainability-focused study abroad programs? We'll take a minute. It's great. We got some interesting responses coming in. Please go ahead and answer the poll. You can take 10 more seconds. Okay, so interesting. Huh? So the biggest reason is basically meeting student demand for meaningful global experiences. And that's really what we've seen as well. And we're very happy today to have with us. Dr. Floria Virban. So Dr. Floria has lots of experience, handling these kinds of challenges in Florence. She's a pioneering scholar whose work sits at the very intersection of our discussion today. She brings a truly transdisciplinary perspective to sustainability education because she's having two PhDs, one in history and civilization from the European University Institute, another in philology from the University of Bucharest. along with advanced degrees in theoretical philosophy and letters. But what makes Professor Verban particularly relevant to our conversation today is her groundbreaking work in sustainability education. She was among the actually very first educators to embed the UN Sustainable Development Goals directly into academic curriculum. And just this past fall, she conducted the inaugural workshop on sustainability literacy for faculty here in Florence. So her research speaks directly to the challenges we are addressing today. Because Professor Verban has an article that's coming up, which is study abroad, whether a post-pandemic study abroad has become merely entertainment, caught somewhere between the educational depth of the grand tour and the superficiality of mass tourism. So this inquiry is actually quite important now because that sets the stage for how we can actually be a part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. Professor Verban, welcome and thank you for joining us today to explore how we can transform study abroad from entertainment into genuine educational impact.
Thank you very much, Ravi. I'm very happy to join you today and to share my experience with all colleagues and eventually to learn something more myself today.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Verban. So, Professor Verban, you've been teaching in international education for many years now for multiple providers as well as universities. From your perspective, how have you seen student expectations and needs evolve in study abroad? And what role do you think sustainability education plays in meeting those challenges, changing demands?
Yes, indeed, teaching for such a long time, so about 20 years, it was an opportunity for me to really observe the trajectory over time of this area. And first of all, let me say that I would not talk about evolution. So I don't see a real evolution, meaning I don't see a qualitative, right, progress. But I see a transformation. So I see that transformation. There is a very important shift, particularly in the last 10 years, and even more so since the pandemic. So the students that are coming, at least to Europe, to many European cities, they are coming with this idea of doing something different from what they are doing back in their home universities. And particularly, I see the last generations of students that they want to do something outside of the classroom. So this is very important. This is a point that we should keep present and take into consideration in shaping and revising our programs. However, let me say that when we talk about sustainability, in that case, there is a revolution, right? So it's a real evolution. It's a revolution, I would say, because 20 years ago, nobody cared about sustainability. Nobody talked about sustainability. I see a growing interest of our students in sustainability. They really care about. So they do look at these cities, European cities in particular, Mediterranean cities even more so, as models, right, of sustainability transformation. So it's the evolution is there, and I would say that we should take advantage of this because this might be embedding sustainability in our programs might be the key for a revolutionary turn in study abroad. So it would be a way, right, to motivate again our students and eventually also to have a sort of response to artificial, counter response to artificial intelligence, bring them out of class, create conditions for them to do something, and they will be enthusiastic to learn from and to talk about. So this, I think it's something positive. Of course, I cannot ignore the general trend that I also talk in my article, that students generally tend to see study abroad as an opportunity for travel and fun, which is fine, but it's important for them not to reduce their experience to that. And I think here we should not simply blame students because with that we solve nothing, right? We should try to understand why are they looking at study abroad in that way and what is to be done for us to motivate them and to have them back not on the old track but on a new track. That would be definitely more sustainable, right? So
Yeah, totally,
that's
absolutely. And there's data that basically demonstrates that students actually do care about sustainability commitments when they're making choices, whether it's a study abroad or universities or other consumer choices.
absolutely. And I think we should remember that one of the SDGs that is probably the most important for all of us in this virtual room today is quality education. So SDG 4. So we should live from that, but also to ask, what does it mean quality education in the third millennium? What does it mean quality education in the study abroad, right? Environment, because it's a totally different environment. We should acknowledge that and shape our programs to respond, right, to these peculiarities. So, and that definitely will help us, as I said, to shape more successful programs in the future. And we should help our students and everybody understand that, no, to just let's say expand, right? An expression used by Bob Brown's saying that the future will be green or not at all. I would say it would be sustainable or not at all, because it's not simply about climate change, but it's about many other things. And study abroad, right, would be sustainable or not at all, because today became highly unsustainable for many reasons.
Right. From an educational perspective, especially given the context of cities like Florence and Barcelona, which are very layered, very ancient, and they've evolved, from their ancient foundations to urban, modern urban design. So how can we use these cities to help students understand the evolution of sustainable practices over time? What makes this historical depth particularly valuable for learning in these kinds of locations, in your opinion?
So let me to use a sort of comparison, right, to help everybody understand the importance of this balance, equilibrium, because changing and preserving. So think about language, right? The more you use a language, the more you innovate it, the more that language will continue to be a living language. If you just use a language observing rigid rules, right, that language will end by dying, as happened with a highly developed language as Latin and many other languages. So you need to keep these cities that are wonderful places, but you should preserve them, but also be sure that these cities are still living environments, right, for the people that are living in the third millennium. You should not transform them simply into museums, right? So this, because this will contradict the history of these cities, right? These layers, I like the idea of the layers, right? Because it's this the point. So most of our students are coming from the United States. They don't have that depth in their home cities, and they are really impressed, right? Just to see these layers and to see the evolution over time, right? How these cities transform over time, right? So that is really an amazing point. And then let me address this issue of historical heritage from another perspective. So we normally tend to think that sustainability is an issue of our times or of recent times and is generally future oriented. This is wrong, because the history of these cities, of this Mediterranean area more generally, it's really full of examples, right? That we progress in certain areas, but not necessarily in others. Infrastructure, sanitation, it's more advanced. But if we look at the building sectors, no, the materials were all natural, for instance, in the past. Then the Romans were great innovators. The Renaissance people were great think about the aqueducts, the Roman aqueducts, and related to water supply infrastructure. Just to give an example, in Rome, it's still standing. In Spain, in Segovia, it's still standing. Think about the Renaissance Florentine people that think about creating public hospitals, about creating the first public schools to give a chance to poor children to go to school and to learn, to open public libraries. So really amazing things. And then even the Middle Ages that we generally tend to consider a time when nothing happened, there was no progress, but in reality many things were invented. The windmills and the water mills were invented for agriculture, but also to produce energy. Think about Barcelona, where there was an amazing revolution in architecture, the Gothic style, but also urban planning was developed during that period of time. And also water management system, right, was a priority for the people in Barcelona during that period of time. So I think we should learn about these, let's say, innovations in the past, because those would be good examples. Florentine Renaissance wouldn't have been possible without learning from Greek and Roman antiquity. So if we want to move forward, we are not supposed to reinvent everything, but we should build on the top on what is already invented. So we should take all the good practices and eventually improve them and invent at our turn new practices. So this is really, this historical depth, right, is students really have a unique chance to see the long history, right? We are talking about 2000 years of history. This is it's a long time, right? And they can touch this with their hands, because some of these things are still, that's the incredible, right, dimension of these cities. These things, some of them are still there. That's why they are precious. That's why we should take care of them. And they also see the transformation over time. So it's important to look and to see what is good, what you are supposed to preserve, what you are supposed eventually to destroy or replace. So you cannot make the street larger, right? You mentioned the streets earlier.
Right.
Yes, that's impossible. But you can remove the cars. You may channel the flux of tourists or even people. So that's the solution. So we are not supposed to look for impossible solutions or for solutions that may damage the identity of this
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I think these places are living laboratories, right? So, which is fascinating. Perhaps now would be a good time to introduce the other speaker, Lorenzo Ciccarelli. Lorenzo has been the center director in Florence for almost 25 years and has recently joined Authentica as the country director for Italy. Welcome, Lorenzo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ravi, and thank you for your perfect pronunciation of my name. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad you're joining us today. It's a very hot day in Florence. Thanks to sustainability, we're trying to keep our air conditioning very low. So regarding your question, yes, as many ancient settlements, they all offer specific examples of how urban sustainability can balance cultural heritage and preservation on one side with the urgent needs of a modern urban life. So Florence and Barcelona specifically demonstrate that it is really not about choosing between past and future. It is about integrating them thoughtfully. For example, in Barcelona, they have developed the so-called Superblock, a very innovative urban design where groups of all the city blocks have been close to traffic, giving priority to pedestrians and cyclists, integrating green space to build a community life. In Florence, they have implemented policies to reduce the impact of over-tourism, trying to put restrictions on short-term rentals, controls on larger groups, aiming to protect the fragile city culture, keeping Florence livable for the residents and committed visitors. Also, there is a continuous project to promote urban mobility, from cyclist paths, ecological public transport, and new walkways along the River Arno. In both cities, Florence and Barcelona, there are examples of adaptive reuse of historical buildings, like prisons, hospitals, or convents. This helps the city to reduce the carbon footprint for new constructions and reduce the waste from the old ones, while at the same time preserving the architectural heritage of the past.
Right.
Barcelona, as another example, is the pioneer in urban water recycling and green infrastructures, as Floaria said before, like permeable pavements and green roofs to combat drought and flash flooding. Also, Florence has been vulnerable to floodings. The big one was in 1966, the last one. They are investing nowadays in warning systems and riverbank restoration. And another project that they have is on the river, and it's an amazing project due to finish probably next year, where since the Middle Ages the fish banks were located where people went to go fishing. They're building now 13 hydroelectric plants that will supply the city with at least 25% roughly of the electricity town demand. Important is, I think, that innovation does not need to erase history, but there is the need today, more than in the past, for an open and inclusive dialogue. I remember when I was a little kid, cars, buses, and trucks were passing next to the Duomo of Florence. And then, when the city center became pedestrian, we did not understand well why. This was at the end of the 70s. We adapted first and understood after. This is the biggest challenge. Make all the stakeholders, including also foreign students, become actors of the new challenges and work together to find the best suitable solution. There are many open roundtables where these topics are being discussed, and we all need to be part of this. We want to improve it.
And it's amazing, right? So because it's hard to believe that there are actually cars and buses and trucks passing next to the Duomo today. And same thing in Amsterdam. It used to be choked. There were traffic jams. You couldn't gridlocks like New York City back in the 70s and 80s. It's only later that the city is actually adapted to make it bicycle friendly and friendly and completely cut out the cars from the city. So that is also innovation in practice. So I'll come back to Professor Verbruggen. What do you think makes the Mediterranean approach to balancing this, preservation with modernization instructive for students, compared to other historic regions? Because, Florence and Barcelona are not the only places, in Europe that have the long history, but I think they are particularly, impacted by over-tourism, and other challenges. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about the unique lessons on sustainability that can be learned in these contexts.
Of course. First of all, let me say that the Mediterranean region, more generally, is an area at crossroads of cultures and civilization. And this is already a very important point. And it's also an area in continuous transformation because of the many ideas, right, that are circulated, because of the people that used to come continuously, and also because the people from these areas used to travel, right? So it was really an open area, and what these cities are today is somehow the result, right, of all these influences. So that some came from other farther areas. So this is already making this area an amazing, unique area. And they were also open-minded. So that means that they were open to new ideas. So they were open to transform themselves. They were open to learn. When they were able to identify better models and to adopt them. The Roman actually took everything, right, from the Greeks, from the Egyptians, and then put those ideas at the basis of their empire, and that made them so powerful and also so advanced. So it's a great opportunity for our students to learn about all these aspects. And you need to preserve, you need to modernize, and we will see, for instance, also differences, right? Barcelona eventually is a little bit more advanced in terms of modernization. You can see that, right? Florence is moving slowly, right? Why? Because the historical conditionality in Florence is higher than in Barcelona. So you are supposed to become aware of that, right? You cannot have the same model even in this different, right, Mediterranean cities, but still different. And students could also see how much effort was put in building these cities, and also to understand how much additional effort you should put in transforming them, in modernizing them. And probably the most important aspect is that, notwithstanding this, of course, beautiful, amazing heritage, but also heavy, right? These cities are so eager to move forward. So they are future-oriented realities. So they are models for many other, right, urban realities. And let me compare a little bit what they are doing today to what in the United States they used to call the California effect, right? So they talk about the California effect when talking about progress in the civil rights environment. California was more advanced, so they set a model and eventually in a second instance push other American states to move forward. So it's actually the same these cities are doing, right? So they are demonstrating that this complex challenge, this complex tasks that they are facing and we all are facing today are not impossible. So you can do it if you really want to do it. So their history, it's a history of progress actually, and of inventions, an invention after another. So if they were able to invent many things and to progress in the past, they are able, actually, that heritage is actually becoming this time a good, right, let's say, instrument for them to reuse. So they learn how to do it. They learn how to adapt in different historical moments, and they will be able to adapt it even today because they are, Barcelona is, in terms of urban sustainability, is the top city in Spain, right? It's second only to San Sebastian generally in terms of general sustainability. But when coming to SDG 11, that is having to do with sustainability of urban environments, and also SDG 17, which is having to do with partnerships for goals, achieving partnership for goals. So Barcelona is top one, right? So, and that it's really, really amazing. And in Florence, Lorenzo mentioned over tourism, right? This is a big issue, but Florence is responding to that. So it's good for them to see that these are not perfect realities. These are realities that are facing huge challenges, right? And however, Florence is facing that, and I'm sure that they are going to find a solution to that because they have to. So there is no alternative. We can't do differently. So the idea is, if these cities with their heavy heritage are able to do it, all other urban environments will do it. And I think they will learn also something about the concept of slow philosophy, right? So we don't have too much time for our sustainable revolution, but this doesn't mean that we should do it in a hurry. We should do everything well, right? And we should pay attention to details, to the impact these changes are going to have on community and also on the heritage too.
Which is perfect. I mean, I think that's a great segue from talking about the nature of the context in which we're operating to translating that into student experiences. So I just want to kind of launch a quick poll. This is again for program design challenges. If you can take a minute to just fill out this poll. What is the biggest challenge you face in designing meaningful study abroad experiences? There are a few choices. I mean, the answer may be all of the above, but I would like you to kind of focus on your biggest challenge. Let's take a few seconds more to get some inputs from the audience. Okay. Most of you have responded. It's really interesting that cost is the biggest challenge because inflation is a beast, and certain places kind of get affected more than others. And we've seen that there is prices, especially in Western Europe, programs have become more expensive as the demand increases, housing costs go up, and programs get more expensive. As a result, two things happen. It prices some of the students out of such engagement, and second is it puts constraint on what can actually be included within a student experience. So thank you for sharing that, and we want to basically demonstrate how we can address both increasing quality and incorporating sustainability elements into the program while also addressing cost. For those of you who joined, registered for the webinar, we'll share more information about how we're able to do that. But in the interest of staying on topic here, I will actually kind of transition into the program design piece. Again, going back to Professor Verban. Now that we kind of understood, the context of these cities and their role or the progress that they're making at different speeds towards sustainability. Now, how can students become active participants in understanding this from beyond being just observers and contributing to urban sustainability solutions in these cities? Now, in your experience, what sort of methodologies work best for experiential learning? Because we really are looking at creating authentic community impact, rather than just more classroom-based experiences.
So this is actually the point, Ravi, because we need to change our teaching philosophy, our educational strategies. So times are changing. So students that are coming today in Florence, in Barcelona, are different from the students I had 20 years ago. So the sooner I accept this, the better would be. So we are the program directors, but also we, the faculty, we are supposed to change something. So because students are looking for something else. So they are looking in particular for opportunities of active experiential learning. This is a matter of fact. They are really happy to do things. And I mean, you can train them because it's a matter of fact, Florence, Barcelona is, in terms of sustainability, is more advanced. So immediately when they are arriving, we educate them. We ask them to pay attention to recycling, to save energy, to use public transportation to reduce waste, but also to avoid fast food. So we are trying to educate them in many ways. So, and this is the first impact on the community, but also on themselves, because this is improving their experience. And then, of course, this is not enough. We are supposed to involve them in community projects. We are supposed to introduce them to various local realities, give them the chance to bring their contribution. As small as that contribution might be, we should be realistic, right? So these students are spending one semester, but is not the quantity, is the quality of the experience that is going to make the difference. And of course, always keeping in mind that urban environment is not simply about buildings, about streets, about infrastructure. It's also about the community. It's about the diversity. So eventually introduce them to an association for immigrants, bring them to an event organized on gender topics. Invite somebody to share experience with them. So there are different ways, right, for them eventually to interact with the local community, and also bring them out of the classroom to see very successful enterprises. For instance, here in Tuscany, we have in Peccioli this amazing experiment that was initiated in 1997, so many years ago. And it's now a model for waste treatment and also a very successful disposal plant. So waste disposal plant. So, and not only is successful in economic terms, but also is successful because the company, which is called Belvedere, is having 60-something%, right, of the share, and the rest is belonging to the citizens of that small place. And moreover, the entire, let's say, reality around change, because it's full of modern works of art. So that they are so proud of this enterprise that they want to celebrate. And you see how success in one area is generating something else, right? And also to give an example from Spain, from Catalonia, so they have an amazing example of a cluster, the Catalonia Waste Cluster. So with a turnover of billions of euros and 40,000 people working. So they managed to create a network, putting together in this amazing project of circular economy everybody that is concerned, from companies, from community, from representatives of universities, everything. So bring them out of the classroom, assign students clear tasks in terms of methodology, or I think could be good for us also to ask them to set themselves some tasks, for them to decide what to do, for them to identify realities that they might be interested. So make them a little bit more proactive, more responsible, because they should learn to navigate these realities. And then it's very important. So you should prepare everything. You should prepare students. You should organize everything in advance. You should make them responsible. You should clearly define the goals. And you should add that important moment of reflection. If you don't have that at the end, it's not useful, because they should reflect and they should share what they are learning. Otherwise, it's just a funny experience, right? That maybe they will learn or not learn something. So it's important to have that moment. Of course, you need to build partnerships. And as I said, particularly, you are supposed to welcome initiatives by students, because they may have ideas we not simply think about. And it's important for us to learn to listen to them. So
yeah, I think, and the good point is that we're able to do this all, while staying true to the academic disciplines, the students are studying. So whether it's a business student, environmental science, political science, all of these students will have relevant, projects that they can actually work on alongside without necessarily deviating from the majors that they're working towards. So all of these locations provide that opportunity. I've seen that.
Yes, it's,
Yeah.
it's definitely, it's an effort. You need to work hard, but with time passing, you are already having your network, you are having partnerships, right, with some of this. You may fail, and you should be honest to admit when you are failing, because that is also an experience, and
Right.
it's not a tragedy. And some students might be more successful, others less so, but it's okay. So it's an opportunity for them to see where they are, which is what is to be done for them, to move further.
Absolutely. I'll move to Lorenzo. Lorenzo, there's a lot of concern amongst universities about program saturation in popular destinations in the Mediterranean, right? So Florence and Barcelona are examples. From a local perspective, what, in your opinion, how do sustainability focused programs, differ from traditional programs in terms of community impact, and what makes some programs, be a part of the problem while others become a part of the solution, in your opinion?
This is a very critical question, and we cannot turn around and pretend this is not a problem. Indeed, there are talks about program saturation in many destinations, including Florence and Barcelona. They can absolutely strain local resources, contributing to gentrification and being sustainable counterproductive, which is the worst. However, sustainable focused programs, when designed responsibly, can shift from a consumer education to a reciprocal engagement. Programs that contribute to the problem often are short-term programs operating like academic tourism, where students are observers or consumers rather than participants. High-volume programs, they do not contribute to a sustainable study abroad program. Using, or better, overusing resources like housing, museum, transportation, and many other services increase the market on one side and the saturation on the other. The same problematic side of the same medal. So it's really a huge issue right now. Using the cities as a checklist rather than an actual living system that requires care, attention, and interaction is crucial. So often residents feel being studied by students and not engaged with them. Students leave at the end of their experience without understanding the ethical implication of their presence in all of the cities they visit. To work for a solution, we need a different approach with prepared, focused students, and this is the main point. Also, using local infrastructure responsibly, avoiding competition with locals for their housing and vital spaces. Study abroad programs need to become part of the solution, integrating sustainability not just as a subject, but as a practice, how students live, move, and learn during their program. We need to offer courses and projects that foster civic responsibility, not just cultural enrichment. Students need to be part of an ongoing effort and not a one-off assignment, emphasizing longer stays, smaller cohorts, and a deeper immersion. This way, students become also ambassadors for responsible and positive impact. Sustainability-focused programs counteract the effects of saturation, not by avoiding popular destination, by transforming how education happens in those places. The key is shifting from occupying space to adding value, from seeing the city as a classroom to recognizing it as a shared living ecosystem. This is also why it is so crucial to have students focus on their destination and learn about everything of the city, get to know the locals, engage in service learning, and stay local. And stay local is not only a catch-up phrase. It is learning about where they are, who their hosts are, and creating a culture of community with the locals. And last but not least, when traveling either on program activities or on their own, choosing carbon neutral options when possible is another step ahead. I really believe that when designed with care, these programs don't just teach students about sustainability, they model it.
Got it. And while we do all of these things, we don't want to kind of take our eyes off learning outcomes. So Professor Verban, how can program directors assess, all of these initiatives? Are they actually enhancing the student learning outcomes, and are they actually having any meaningful impact on the community? Is there a way to kind of assess that? What indicators can we use?
So first of all, I think initiatives should be discussed, right? And should be integrated. All activities should be integrated at least partially in the academic curriculum. And in that way, you are linking them directly to learning outcomes, right? And that might be relevant for more courses, if not for all courses, right? You may, I don't know, have tracks for students that focus on certain things or on other things, and you have, and hence not the importance of the transdisciplinary approach, because sustainability, the SDGs, right, are interconnected, and you need a transdisciplinary approach. Then a second point is that all these initiatives should be discussed by the faculty and the academic director, staff, students. So it should be a joint effort, right? Because otherwise they will not be relevant. So we should embrace the philosophy of the common task, right? So sustainability is a common task, but also in our small environment, right? Our small environment should be sustainable, right? Students should study in a sustainable environment. The faculty should work in a sustainable environment. The staff should work in a sustainable environment. And they all together will contribute, right? Because the faculty may propose an activity, but you need the economic support, you need the assistance of the staff in order for that activity, right, to be successful. So, and also I would say less is more, less activities, but of high quality, relevant, right, that are directly connected to what students are studying. So we are not supposed, right, to make of sustainability an end in itself, right? Because sustainability doesn't exist separated, right, from other things, and in a higher education environment, so cannot be separated from education. So they need, right, to have sustainability literacy in order to be able to enjoy an experiential activity, right, and to contribute, right, in the right way. So you need to shape your micro, right, community in a sustainable way to connect it to the macro community that is hosting your program. So you need coordination, you need collaboration, you need transparency, right? And you particularly need a shared willingness to act in a decisive way and to make the difference, that you want to make the difference. And to go back to the saturation, indeed, there are so many students. And the problem is not even the amount of students, because, we have millions of tourists. We are critical with our students and people are blaming, but in reality, our students are spending a long period of time in these cities. They are having a positive economic impact on these cities, right? So they are spending money, they are creating jobs. They are, however, learning something, so they are going to talk about these cities. It's much better to have students that to have students that are tourists that are spending a few hours in Florence or in Barcelona or in other. So I think we should, right, see the full part of the glass, and eventually to try to do our part, not the number, but what you do with those students. How do you assist them? Because if the idea is to bring 500, 1,000 students just to make more money, that, I mean, it needs no comments. But if the idea is that you really want to do something, then you may find a way, right, to assist all those students to have more courses, because you have also more means, you have more money actually, and you can do more things. So it's, as I said, the philosophy of the common task, a transdisciplinary approach, an integral vision, right, because things are interconnected, and this idea of the trans-academic, right, of this famous principle, right, used since antiquity, used by the corporations in Florence, right? Learning by doing. So they were called arts, they were called universities in Rome, right? And they were training, right, other members in that way by showing them, by asking them to do things. So this is fundamental, right? If we want for these students to go back in their countries and to become better citizens, more beautiful human beings.
Right. I mean, that's the goal, right? So based on what we just heard, just a brief one last poll for the audience. What is your current interest, based on today's discussion? How likely are you to explore developing or expanding sustainability focused programs in the Mediterranean cities? Please take a few seconds to fill in this poll. Great. I'm very happy to see that there's actually a strong interest from a few of you to move forward this year. Excellent, because I think what we need is not to shy away from this problem, oh, there's too many programs and too much saturation in Florence and Barcelona, but a different kind of programming. So when we thought about bringing this program to Florence and Barcelona, we had this question on whether this is the right place to do it. But it's precisely because students want to go here that we need a different kind of program in Florence and Barcelona. There are opportunities and avenues to do that, Authentica being one of them. So again, thank you for your contribution today, Floria, to share your experience and expertise given the decades that you've seen the evolution and seeing the student interest change and the opportunities that we are sitting on to transform. I would love to have some questions in the last few minutes that we have. Any questions, any burning questions? Is there something that we can do for you to help take the next step? Please unmute yourself or raise your hand. No questions? Professor Verban, any closing thoughts?
So maybe the closing thought is, it's actually what I'm doing since 2022, no, probably. I'm for sure in Italy, but I think one of the first in general in the study abroad environment that decided to embed the SDGs in all of my courses. So, and I'm teaching so many different courses, right, from history courses to anthropology courses, but also political economy courses. And it's working. It's working. Students are great. I'm really very happy. So I think that the idea is not simply to have one or two courses that are talking about sustainability or that are teaching the SDGs. Much more important is to have them embedded in all courses. It's absolutely necessary, because in that way, all students, right, not only those that are going to take the sustainability course, is going to learn about. So this is one point. The second point, I really insist on the fact, because still today, I hear people that are reducing sustainability to climate change. It's absolutely important, climate change, but sustainability is not simply about climate change. It's about so many other things. And knowing that is making easier, much easier, no, the embedding of the SDGs in all courses. So whatever you teach, it's really so easy. And you know, for my students, I just explain them at the beginning of the semester what the SDGs are, how they are working, and they are supposed to embed in all. It's not simply me. So I'm doing a small part of the job. Are my students that are doing the job. So all assignments, in all assignments, they should embed 1, 2, 3 SDGs, right? They are writing a manifesto against the mafia or against races, and they are supposed to make a connection, right, with one of the SDGs. So this is absolutely important. So for all of us, because in my experience, I've seen more resistance from my colleagues, from faculty, and from some program directors than from my students. So the students are really open and happy to work with the SDGs. They are waiting for us to assist them and to teach them more about.
That's really inspiring, right? It gives us hope that the demand is coming from the students, and it's just a matter of, how are we going to respond and when are we going to respond to it. Again, thanks again, Floria, for your inspiration, for leading the way as a faculty in doing what you're doing. And we're happy to be partnering with you and to be bringing this differentiated program to Florence and Barcelona. So thanks everybody for taking interest.
I would just like to say something very quickly to end up as well.
Yes, please, Lorenzo. Yeah.
We need to think sometimes that it is good to make an extra effort and walk 5 blocks and get an apple from the farmer's market rather than going to the grocery store. It's always worth an effort. Might cost a little bit more, but you get really something healthy for you, for the environment, and make something good for your future. Saying this, I also would like to remind everybody, if you're interested, that on the 9th of July, we will have another webinar on apples. No, from the farm to the table on Mediterranean food. So very happy if you can join us again on the 9th of July.
Thanks, Lorenzo, for the plug. And we will send you more details about we have 2 more webinars in this series related to different topics, for the same region. So stay tuned. And thanks again for joining, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Floria. Thank you, Lorenzo.